weeks ago. Which state do you think Republicans are more worried about, Lauren, Georgia or North Carolina?
I think they're really worried about both. I think Harris has a really good shot at Georgia. Republicans have really screwed up there the past couple election cycles. They made certain assumptions. In 2022, they ran Herschel Walker. He, blazed through the primary with celebrity status and then lost in the general election. They made lots of those kinds of mistakes. And Harris has been visiting there. She has strong ties there. And again, it is one of these hard-fought abortion states where the issue is very much on the minds of voters, and it's definitely on the ballot in a certain sense.
What did you think of her comments today? I go to you first, Lauren, and then come back to Taryn. As I said, she and I talked about this last hour, right after the vice president finished in Atlanta, to focus an event in that state exclusively on abortion as an issue. What did you make of it?
I think it's really smart strategically. Look, I think there's lots of weaknesses in Kamala Harris's candidacy. Abortion is not one of them. I think she should have probably been the White House's chief spokesperson on the issue from the second Roe v. Wade was repealed. They held back a little bit, and now she's really hit her stride. And so I do think in Georgia, it's a good match for the message. She can't totally abandon the economy, but she can definitely, put all her chips on this issue for the most part, and that's a strong strategy.
And the reason I wanted to do it as a 1 out of 2, Taryn, to say, if Harris loses Pennsylvania, that's what we were doing at the top, which is entirely possible. It's literally a coin flip. According to the data, it's like about a 50-50 state. Maybe it's the slightest of advantages to Harris, but very, very slight. Then you get 16 each of these states. So it would be a must win in one of the two. So that's what I would go back to you with. Which is more likely? Is it Georgia or North Carolina?
Well, I think she's going to win in both, and I think she's going to win in Pennsylvania.
Well, I know that's what you think, but I'm about to say, if you had to pick which she's more favored in or more likely,
But part of the reason I do is because I think that these issues are resonating with so many people, right? The strategy here is to talk directly to these people about these issues and bringing them so much to the forefront. And I think today's event was so much about, talking directly to the people and feeling relatable and having these stories come so much to the forefront of I can see this happening to me. Talking about eating dogs and cats doesn't feel relatable, right? That feels ridiculous and out of the ordinary. Talking about lowering grocery prices and feeling that effect in Pennsylvania, right? Talking about how hard it is and struggling and about healthcare costs and my prescriptions that I have to go pick up at the drugstore, right? That feels relatable. And in all of these places, those are the things people are actually experiencing.
But it's still so close. We spent a lot of our show,
it's still close.
Right, talking about. So we have all these stories that we're on. We do it every day, right, Lauren? That Taryn was just talking about, and she, throw Springfield into the mix. Should be a negative story for Trump. Throw, this event today and talking about abortion should be a positive story for Harris, negative for Trump. It still could not be closer according to the data. And if the election was tonight, I have no idea who would win. What would you say, big picture, then, Lauren, about the state of this race and what it comes down to?
Well, I have a different perspective on Pennsylvania, for instance. Okay. This is a state where Harris's flip-flopping is going to cost her. I don't think it's reasonable for voters that work in the energy industry, in fracking, for instance, to say, okay, she said something totally different in 2019, and now she says fracking's back on the table. People in the north and west parts of the state might just not trust that, and that's very reasonable. It's also a state, again, where they have abortion protections in place up to 24 weeks. And so it's not as much of a salient issue there than it is in these other states where women feel that they're really threatened on that front. So I think Trump, if there was one of these grab bag of states where he's looking stronger than Harris, I think Pennsylvania
I agree with
is
you.
one of those.
I think it's a really good point, and you made it in a really smart way because you talk about who's worried about what. Harris might want to be worried about Pennsylvania for those reasons that Lauren just laid out. Taryn, why is she wrong? Or maybe you don't think she's wrong.
Well, I think that you're going to see Harris visiting Pennsylvania a lot. And I think the one thing that's going to be true of this campaign, especially because it's so truncated, is that they're going to be worried about every state because, this is the thing with a Trump race. It's going to be close and they're going to be everywhere. They're not going to make any mistakes about leaving anything behind. And they're going to talk to as many voters as they can. We don't have a lot of time. And she does have to earn their trust. I think you're completely right about that.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.